Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Dell Disability Lawyers, joined by attorney Cesar Gavidia, and today we're going to talk about one of Cesar's resolved cases against Lincoln Financial. And Cesar, we'd like you to share with us the background of your case, what you were able to do, and then how we're going to help this client moving forward. And as you go through it, we'll talk back and forth about some issues that we think will help people who have claims with Lincoln.
Sure. Our client was a registered nurse for Dignity Health. They're a big health institution out in California in the West Coast. And she had been suffering with some low back issues. When she went in and her doctors set her up with an MRI, they found that she had lumbar spondylosis. A lot of these things for people in physically demanding occupations like being a nurse in a hospital, these are things that develop over time. It's almost like they're occupational hazards, all occupational disabilities. Developed knee problems as well. She continued to try to work through all these things, suffered through it for quite some time until it at least became a realization to her that this was her continuing to try to go in and push through things every day. One, wasn't helping her. It was just exacerbating her condition and making things worse. And it certainly wasn't, she wasn't providing any sort of service, at least the quality of service to the patients that they really deserved.
Was she a registered nurse?
She was an RN.
Okay.
Yeah. So she made the decision, along with the support of her doctors and her treatment providers, that she had to stop working. She stopped and she submitted a disability claim with Lincoln Financial, who's the disability insurer for Dignity Health. And they actually, upon initially reviewing the claim, they approved it. And they approved it through actually 24 months. This decision wasn't made immediately because they still continued assessing her and asking her doctors for updates and asking her for updates as those 24 months went along. But they paid her up to 24 months. And what's important about 24 months is that that's known as the own occupation period. And own occupation basically means that as long as the claimant is unable to perform the material duties of their own occupation, in her case a registered nurse, then they meet the definition of disability and Lincoln will pay those benefits. Well, coming up to the 24 months, Lincoln started a medical review and a vocational review.
Before you get into what Lincoln did at you said prior to the 24 months, is it common for claimants with Lincoln policies to get denied from the change of definition from an own occupation to an any occupation?
Well, it actually is a common occurrence, and the reason is because it's a very substantial change. And it's also Lincoln putting the claimant through a very significant review of their claim. They're no longer looking at whether this person is able to engage in their own occupation, which in her case could be a very physically demanding occupation, one that could be light to medium to even heavy level in terms of physical demand and how they define how that occupation is performed on a national scale and in the labor market. But now it kind of broadens that scope to consider, well, what else can you do with a nursing degree? Can you review things, review claims? Can you assess medical records? Can you work in a triage capacity? Basically sedentary and reviewing patients as they come in. And that's what they did with her. And the thing is, and this is what's important to people out there that are going through this process, is that they don't tell you that they're doing this oftentimes. They just do it. And so there's no way really to prepare. If you don't know it's happening, you're not preparing your doctors appropriately, you're not preparing your claim appropriately to address these things when this review comes up. And what Lincoln had concluded at that point was that she was able to work in 3 or 4 different occupations, that she had transferable skills to work in 3 or 4 different occupations that kind of involved being a nurse. I think one was a triage nurse, a reviewing nurse of some sort, and basically things that were involved being in a sedentary capacity, sitting down, not lifting, not having to walk or stand for extended periods of time.
And so I'm assuming they ended up obviously denying her based upon their medical review of the file. So what did you do in order to win the appeal?
So she reached out to us after being denied, and she didn't really waste too much time in reaching out to us, and really that was a good thing. That was really advantageous to her because it allowed us to really assess the claim, determine what does it need. We were able to request the file from Lincoln, which we got right away. We were able to really dig into the vocational assessment that they'd done, the peer review medical assessment that they'd done, and address those appropriately. Reach out to our own experts, and we went to really highly regarded vocational experts, highly regarded functional capacity therapists that we referred the client to, who put her through a very extensive review and a very extensive examination to really assess whether she was capable of working in any gainful occupation. And once we got those reports back, it was absolutely crystal clear she was not able to work in a gainful occupation. We were able to also customize attending physician forms that we provided to her treatment providers, and a significant report that came back was actually from her physical therapist, who we actually also provided the functional capacity examination report to, who provided a very comprehensive assessment and analysis in our attending physician statement that established she wasn't able to engage in any gainful occupation. So all these things together, we addressed the reasons that they denied in the appeal, and we successfully had the appeal overturned by Lincoln.
And it's really challenging because it's totally different set of circumstances when you go from the own occupation to the any occupation when you're an RN, because RNs, we've argued, is a medium to heavy duty type job, because you could be expected to do a bed transfer of a patient that's 150, 200 or more pounds
Right.
you got to participate in. So that's a clear duty of an RN. And because of that, when you make the change from ONOC to ENEOC, the disability company is like, well, now we're looking at it as a sedentary occupation. We're not concerned that you had to lift or you had to be on your feet all the time or you had to be able to sit, stand frequently, all the things that are required as an RN, because you don't just sit there and look at the patient. It's a very physical job. And now they were saying basically, look, we think you can do all the jobs that you mentioned were basically desk jobs.
Right.
So now we had to show to say, look, our client can't do a desk job. And that's the biggest challenge, because disability companies think it's easy picking.
Right.
Let's just say you can go sit at a desk all day. But it's so much more than just sitting. It's not about could she just sit all day. So how do you convey to the disability company that the task isn't just sitting, that it's so much more than that?
Yeah, and I think that's why it was important to put the claimant in this case through a really comprehensive functional capacity review. Lincoln hadn't done that, and so including that was, I think, really nailed the case shut, in terms of how I viewed it. Also, addressing other things, because sedentary still requires, someone's ability to think and analyze and use their intellect. And in this case, she was taking medications that impaired her ability to clearly think and focus and concentrate. And even in being a nurse and assessing someone coming in to the emergency room, for example, and taking information from them and being able to log their medications appropriately, you make a mistake there, and that could be the difference between that patient living or dying, right? So also addressing those things is important, even from a sedentary capacity.
Right, so the huge cognitive aspects of the job, having to think about everything, having to multitask, having to remember things, having to process, all of those things. And when you're in pain, anyone who's ever been in pain knows that those things don't flow easily. The only thing you want to do is find relief for your pain, and that overcomes your priority of your thought process, not sitting there thinking about, I got to focus on my job. Yeah, you want to focus on your job, but you can't because you have this distraction, which is the pain. And that was the problem that our client was having, and that's the issue that disability companies kind of ignore in a way and don't consider, because they go, where's the proof of your pain? Well, we know that's a joke. There is no proof of pain.
Right.
Pain is subjective. There's no machine, test, anything that's going to say, yeah, that person's in pain. So it's a routine case in the sense for you, a routine denial that we commonly see from Lincoln, that you've seen hundreds of with this specific company. And It was great that you were able to help this client, and now I know moving forward that benefits have been reinstated, but the client still has to prove eligibility for benefits every month, and the client is subject to still potentially being denied again in the future. But now, the way in which she's been guided and coached by you, the medical records are going to be dialed in. They're going to state all of her complaints, all of her conditions, everything that's going on with her. So now there's no holes in the medical records. And I know you review them every couple months and you communicate with her carrier, and she can focus on her health and you can focus on making sure she continues to get paid. So that's a great thing all around. So congratulations. If you're somebody out there who has a Lincoln Financial long-term disability claim, feel free to reach out to Cesar or myself. No matter where you live in the country, we're available to assist you, and we'll always provide you with a free initial phone consultation.